Good Nigeria, Souq Nigeria. Welcome to Early Exchange. It's a wet Thursday morning in Lagos, Nigeria, but we're here, and it's important because whenever we show up, the whole idea is to start conversations that shape policy in a bid to advance development. My name is Temple Barra, and as usual, I do have the delectable Blessing HF for company and partnership in this process of driving change.
Hello, TC.
Hello,
Good
Blessing.
morning.
Good morning to you.
You sound so delighted, so may I ask what's the good
Have
news?
you close to me
Very
here?
good,
I
that's
mean,
good. I've been getting lots of love,
no, we're always fighting,
Harry
but
doing
I'm
that to
just
the
trying
brain.
to trade a blind eye to the.
Not from you, so that you
Yeah,
don't.
okay.
I mean,
I just don't want to fight with you anymore.
I was never fighting. We thank you so much for joining us this Thursday morning, which TC has told you is a wet one in Lagos. Don't know what the weather is at your end. You can share with us when you get to our YouTube channel. Leave a comment. Tell us what the weather is like.
Glad to know that you're still tuned in to Souq News Television. And of course, just to let you know that the second half of the show is going to be focusing on telecommunications. So there's been recent developments and events where telecom operators and workers have gone. It's been like a loggerhead, and this has led to service disruptions from time to time. Now, there are fears that if there's a prolonged service disruption, which is as a result of strike actions, well, it might have a devastating effect on the economy, on the country in general. Well, this is coming on the heels of a new quality of service regulation, which is coming on board by the Nigeria Communications Commission. And all of that just seems to be amounting to, how do I describe it now? A situation where there might be a detrimental effect on the telecommunications industry. Joining us this morning is Sheson Okunade, who is an economic analyst, and he's going to be looking at some of this development with us. Of course, I still do have Blessing in the studio with me. Good morning to you, Sheson.
Good morning, Temple. Good morning, Blessing, and good morning to all our listeners across the globe. Glad to be here this morning.
Look at the quality of service regulation being enforced by the NCC. Let's start off with some of the specifics. So, what are those specific regulations that telecommunications operators must meet as proposed by the NCC when it comes to quality of service?
Okay, thank you very much. When you talk about the NCC quality of service regulation, it speaks to the management and control of the network resources to ensure that crucial application and service receives adequate bandwidth. Talked about the latency and the packet loss, that is guaranteed. And when you look at the current happening that we have in that sector, we discovered that there have been series of service disruption based on a certain factor we consider impacting on them. When you look at service delivery expected of the telcos or the service providers, there are major things that plays good role for quality service delivery. And one of it is energy cost. You and I understand the path at which this has impacted on businesses, but it adds more on the telcos, hindering their service delivery, if you ask me. For you to enjoy the service both of us are actually doing now, being able to communicate, the infrastructure is expected to be up 24/7 without any downtime. And when you look critically at the investment in terms of this energy, when you have all other infrastructure in place, if it's not meeting up to expectation, then definitely there will be service disruption. And then NCC has actually come out with this regulation to make sure that the consumer they have the service delivery expected of them. Well, I feel that NLC too should put into consideration the survival of some of these service providers because the continuity of their business also guaranteed quality service delivery.
All right. If you're talking about considering the challenges that the service providers have to deal with, does that mean that some key performance indicators, as they put it in this new NCC quality of service, should be set aside?
Yeah, well, we won't say we should set it aside because you can't compromise quality for quality service delivery for anything because that's the basic basis of the existence of the organization themselves. But what we are saying is, how can we have a government contribution in the survival of some of these things? Let me say that a typical NCC quality of service will include tariff classification. How is NCC working in line? See, they've been very careful not to impose so much tariff on the people that are using the service with the economic hardship. Leaving aside that the survival of the business owner or the service provider guarantees that quality. So you've heard times with that number that the service provider will come up to tell you that they need to increase the tariff cost so that they can meet up to the service that is expected of them. NCC needs to balance this act, if you ask me, because you can't be requesting for quality service delivery without commensurate cost on the part of those that will enjoy those services. And if you listen, you check in the public space, most of these telcos on their own too are retrenching. I heard about one of the giants in that sector lay off, hundreds of staff because of the sustainability of the business. That's an impact on it. You are throwing people back to the labor market, which you consider as a threat to economic growth. So it should be a balancing act. Coming out with quality delivery regulations. You must, on the other hand, be able to have understanding of what the service providers too are undergoing to meet up with whatever regulations that you are bringing on board.
It sounds like you belong to the school of thought that Nigerians, let's focus on Nigeria. Nigerians are probably not paying enough for some of the services. If I had to, take cue from your statement about the fact that the NCC is not doing enough for telecom operators. I mean, who should the NCC be protecting? Telecom operators or is it the business providers or the service providers, the first line persons, who should be considered, or aren't the end users, all the customers, aren't they the ones who should be in focus here?
Yeah, it's a balancing thing. You don't focus on one and ignore the other. When you focus on the service provider at the detriment of the customers, then you may not have it all. If you focus on the customer and the detriment of the service provider, you may not have it all. So it's a balancing act. And what I'm actually speaking to at this point is that the NCC is one of the agency of government who can lend their voice in possibly asking for palliatives for some of these organizations in that telco company, knowing how strategic and important this service is to every organization or the economic and growth of our nation. There can be issue where there will be subsidy on some of the things as a major factor. The key thing that I know is actually impacting seriously on this service delivery is the energy cost. Look at majority of those people now, if they are on band A, what they're actually paying, regardless of the amount of energy being provided. And when that energy is not, the main national grid is not available, they go on alternative if you go to an average base station that you have out there, you have basically the national grid, the generating set, the solar energy. Look at the cost of setting up that base station. If we can streamline it in such a way that all other energy costs, can be abated, and you just face maybe once, and you minimize your cost of investment, definitely it will minimize the cost at which they will. So these are areas I'm saying that it should not be a situation where you consider the consumer at the detriment of the service provider. It should be a balancing act when you are bringing out your regulation in such a way that they are able to meet up with their KPIs as promised by them to the regulators.
Besides the cost of power, which is an infrastructure issue, in what way can the NCC offer some support to the operators?
Well, I think there's a part where majority of the equipment they make use of are more they are imported. They are not locally manufactured in the country, and I think the NCC has been able to assist some of these service providers to have access to the foreign exchange. Rather than them sourcing outside, even though it's not as much as what is expected, but at least they have some leverage with the central bank in having access to the foreign exchange. That's a good relief. But I still feel that energy cost plays a major role. When you bring down some of those infrastructure, it's just like, you see, the way telcos run is the same way you uh, 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 producer these television stations, radio stations, the same way you operate. You disseminate information and you are expected to be up and running 24/7. So you can imagine if there is no power where you are now, or the cost of power is impacting on your service delivery, definitely you won't be able to give the best to the people. That's why more emphasis is being laid on the area of energy cost for the service provider, so that if you reduce the energy cost, every other cost seems to be managed by them. You can regulate, you can manage what you use in the personnel you recruit. If you are overstaffing, you can reduce those ones, but you cannot control this issue of energy that we're talking about, because it's something that your service relies on basically. And I think that is why we focus more on the area of energy cost for the survival of these service providers.
Let's look at the focus now. And the focus here is telecom operators and workers. And, that propensity, that constant loggerheads could lead to disruptions in service and strike. Why are telecom workers, aggrieved? Well, what's the problem? What do they want? Why are they striking?
Well, you and I understand the major reason why a worker would definitely hold his employer, to ransom at this time and issue strike. It's about the cost of living, of which is becoming unbearable to an average person. I'm sure ASU is planning to go on strike. The medical practitioners, the resident doctor are on strike. So you feel that you don't want to be shortchanged. You need to raise your voice too, at least to have a fair. And that's why we've actually been addressing the government that certain policy that are being put in place, even though is considered by them as the right way to go, is impacting more on the citizens. So when the businesses cannot survive, what that in turn to is to retrench the staffs that you have. And that's why you will see workers, threatening their employer, most especially those that are unionized, to make sure that any idea of them, being sacked or being retrenched will lead to service, because the management won't do the work. They coordinate those people that we have on the field. And I feel that the government needs to prevail on it, because when the organization cannot survive, there is nothing you can do to continue, running over bloated personnel costs, which you consider as germane for the survival of the business. So I'm sure the area is to focus on increasing their cost of living, which everybody practically is agitating for across every spectrum of the economy. There is no sector that I speak are not actually having this. In fact, organizations have resorted to people work from home and reduce their time of coming to the office so that they can augment and complement that which they are faced with currently. So it's nothing more than improving the cost of living, for the workers in that sector, which is a right agitation, if you ask me. But you must put it on the other side. Is the organization, that buoyant to actually carry out some of the requests in terms of increasing salary and making the workers to be better off? I'm sure that you and I understand that the answer is no, based on the issues that they are faced with currently.
All right, so this strike has been called by workers under the aegis of a group called Private Telecommunications and Communications Senior Staff. But the chairman of the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria, while reacting to the development, says that the group is not known to them, the telecom operators. So where does this leave the telecommunication industry? If the workers of the group that have called for the strike, the telecom operators say they do not know the group, but yet the group seem to have an influence on what happens in the industry. Does this look like it's going to be a long battle?
Yeah, well, it will be a long battle, in the sense that if the employers are saying they don't recognize that particular union calling up for the strike, it will lead to them, going to the judiciary for interpretation and the existence of some of this union. It's not enough for you to just come together. There are basic process that you are expected to follow to set up union in an organization. And most organizations these days, look for way to discredit that arm of union coming together within their organization, because they consider them more as threat. So if this is not recognized by the outcome, which is the regulator, these private operators, don't forget, majority of them are private firms, and they are not like government establishment that gives room for this union to strive. So what the union needs to do is first entrench themselves and have that recognition backed by law or the act that established them, put it across to the employers. With that, they can have a sail through to pass whatever they want to pass. But if the employer are saying they are not recognized, they too must have carried out their investigation to consider that, and that will be a long-running battle, of which they will always say when two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. So it's with the customer that will definitely suffer some of these shortfalls that we are seeing from the argument, whether they exist or they do not exist, or whether the employer want to acknowledge their request or not.
About elephants fighting and the grass suffering, the Secretary General of this group have actually said that they have over 800 of their members working at various Nigerian telecom company facilities. And what they have threatened to do is that they would not respond to any of these telco operators when there are outages. So where does that leave Nigeria? You know that this is the digital age when where many services are hinged on telecom operations.
Yeah, blessings. Truth be told, it's going to impact on us seriously, and I think both parties needs to have a common ground at which they will meet at this point in time. I know that most of these the telecommunication companies contract some of their things out, and that's why I'm of the opinion that is it of the staff that are actually challenging status quo, or the so-called partners to some of these organizations, the service provider. If it is the conglomerate of the vendors or the consultants to this telecommunication, if they are backed by the law, I'm sure that the telcos will have a listening ear to their request to see how much they can. But on the other side, we must have a feel of the survival of the business, because by the time you give tall order to your employer or to those that engage you in service, and they are unable to meet up with the responsibility, once the organization goes down, then you don't have any business to offer. You don't have anything you can call a place of your own. So it's a point where dialogue should actually be engaged in this for common ground to be agreed between both the service provider and their employee in such a way that we won't have service disruption, which we consider. I looked at one of the prologue before we start this program on AI. It rests surely on this infrastructure that we are talking about. If the internet facility is not high up there will be serious disruption in terms of growth. And every area now we focus more on the technology, which we all ride on. If not for technology, I'm sure this that we are doing now will not be visible. And if there are service disruption, you can feel that it's not just going to be one-sided. The health sector needs it, the education sector needs it. You've seen instances where students are actually having lectures from home and they don't go to classes, and it rests on this infrastructure. So I feel that both parties need to dialogue, share understanding with one another, so that the service, the customers can enjoy the service that is required for our economic growth. We can't afford to toy with this sector called the telecommunication sector, because it's the bedrock. The financial aspect, banking, they need it. An average accountant needs it. The civil servant needs it. Practically, the media houses needs them. So we require their service. So both parties should have a common ground, knowing fully well the magnanimity of what they contribute to the economic growth.
Okay, so as we wind down gradually, it feels as though we've come to that point where we can both agree that the impact this is going to have, I mean, the industrial action is going to be negative on the economy, and of course Nigeria as a whole. Now, earlier in this on the program today, you talked about the NCC providing balance. You said it's up to the NCC to ensure that telecos are represented, or like they get best deals, and of course the end users who are the customers also are not left out. You talked about balance. Now, in that balance, do you think the NCC also has a role or an obligation to telecom operators? And if yes, I mean, what can they do, or what should they do to salvage the situation so it doesn't degenerate?
Yeah, well, as regulators, they need to prevail on the situation by intervening for both parties concerned, both the union and the employer, and they have a common ground. The regulators don't fold their hands. See the agency or the organization they are regulating goes down. If we have non-existence of those organizations, then there won't be any regulatory agency in existence, because you regulate organization that exist. So I feel that the regulators needs to also intervene in the matter, call both party concerned to a common ground. Don't forget, the employers are coming up to say they do not recognize this union. The NCC needs to come up to actually speak up if indeed they exist. If they exist, how can they prevail on the employer to have understanding based on the request? Don't forget, even with the federal government, when people go on strike, there are always common ground at which they will always reach. It's a win-win thing. And it is when the regulator prevail on some of these things that we can have that acted out. Otherwise, both parties may want to stand their ground, and that will impact on service delivery for as long as we can have that record. So regulator needs to play a key role by mediating on the part of both the union and the employer to have a common ground that will not affect service delivery for we the customers.
Away from the strike and now to the financial standing of the telecommunication companies in Nigeria, this has been mixed for in recent years. We have some of the operators actually having good financial performance. I mean, if you check the Nigerian Stock Exchange and at the end of trading, you find that the telecom sector is always doing well. Now, what does this say about the local players? It seems like those who are doing well are more of the telecommunication companies that are not owned by indigenous players. Do we need more local investment for the local players?
Yeah, thank you very much, Blessing. That business we're talking about is predominantly more of foreign exchange, and you need so much foreign investors into our local content if we must survive that particular sector. I understand your plight that a lot of foreign companies, you see, you can't take away finance from this because majority of those infrastructure you see out there, not just the building, we're talking of investment in base station that actually powered some of the areas where you see. If there is no international backing, it might lead to the threat of the survivor of that organization. So areas where we look at is can the local, collaborate with the international companies to see how they can have a buy-in, not just you stand alone. We always say it's better you have a few percentage of a larger share that you enjoy a larger share that is not commensurate for survivor. So I feel that is that sector predominantly is capital intensive. For sustainability or for sustenance, you must have a good financial backing, of which we are not seeing. You see, we have asked government to have adoption of what the Chinese companies are doing. They look at opportunity for their own within their territory, back them up, and they can grow from the nation and expand to other areas, possibly in Africa. That's the China model which they are using. There are several organizations that have come from the outside world, and it's not that it's the organization that is actually succeeding. They have the backing of the government of their nation in easing some of the problems they are faced. That will lack as a nation, and the government needs to just address it so that we can have our local company grow and be able to compete favorably, with some of these international brands.
Well, thank you so much, Jason Guade. I mean, we could go on and on because for us, it's important. Like you mentioned, our conversation, communication is powered by the internet. And I dare say it is imperative that we don't even have any issues whatsoever, with internet and, of course, its service delivery. But then we look forward to having more conversations in this regard with you in the next couple of weeks, and as we monitor this development in the telecommunications sector.
Thank you very much for having me, Temple and Blessing, and I wish you the very best of the day, and to same to all our viewers across the globe.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.